bet this one came as a surprise. Kind of like how Finland in general came as a surprise to everyone in the 19th century. Prior to the publication of the Kalevala, a collection of poems recounting the myths of the Finnish people, the rest of the world kind of looked down on Finland as yet another Slavic country which barely contributes to anything. Way back in 98 AD, as part of his study of the Germanic peoples living outside the borders of the Roman Empire, Cornelius Publius Tacitus visited the southern regions of modern-day Finland and recorded what he observed of the Feni people in his book De Origine et Situ Germanorum, or as it is more commonly known, Germania. Tacitus's review of the Feni wasn't exactly glowing. He described the people he observed as unimaginably barbarous and miserably poor. They have no weapons, no horses, no houses, and naught but wild plants for their food, skins for their clothing, and the ground for their beds. Now, in the Feni's defense, there are quite a few depictions of these people eating actual animals rather than merely wild plants, in the form of cave paintings. Which I guess really doesn't help their case. Yeah, Finland was kind of lacking behind the rest of Europe at this time, and they didn't really start practicing what can charitably be described as a peasant way of life all the way up until about the late Iron Age, where the family units basically functioned as their own separate entities, discouraging the development of towns, and thus meaning that Finland never developed a uniform set of beliefs. The very few myths unique to them are heavily influenced by the Slavic, Norse, and Germanic mythologies, and were recounted orally for the most part, meaning that if there ever was an original mythology unique entirely to the Finns, it's totally lost to history now. All we have left of them is the aforementioned Kalevala, written by Finnish physician Elias Lönnrot as late as 1835, which brings into question whether or not we can really even call this mythology. By traditional definitions, you could argue that this is instead a work of fiction. Now, I'm hardly anyone's authority on mythology, and I'm nowhere near pretentious enough to claim that I am. However, I'd argue that through a technicality, it does count as a mythology for one of three reasons. First, harkening back to my video on the Celtic creation story. This isn't merely something which was written down, it had to be reconstructed via partial inscriptions with blanks filled in by Celtic scholars' imaginations. That being said, I don't find it particularly egregious or offensive, unlike some people, for them to do such a thing. Much like the Celtic scholars, Lönnrot attempted to do the same thing, only with less reliable records attributing to a pre-established mythology. Point number 2. People actually do believe in this. Neo-paganism isn't just for the Celts, ladies and gentlemen. There actually do exist small swaths of people in Finland who attest this to be their official religion. If it can be a religion, it can be a mythology. No different than the likes of the Wills being a part of the mythology of Star Wars, with Jedi being a legitimately recognized religion. No, seriously, look it up. Third, and most finally, it's important to note that mythology is never and has never been set in stone. As we discussed in the Amun-Ra video, cultures changed throughout history, and their mythologies shift alongside them. Case in point, Judaism shifting into Christianity and Christianity shifting into Islam, or the Roman syncretism, or, shameless plug, Egypt following the rise of Thebes. Taking older aspects of one's belief system and reinterpreting them with time is a natural progression of mythology as a whole. If no one was ever imaginative with the way that they told their folktales, we would have never progressed past animism. Oh, and number 4, this is my channel, fuck you, I do what I want. On with the story! So, like with any other mythology, we begin with an awful lot of nothing. Only an empty, water-lined void and an awful lot of wind. Oh, and ducks. For some reason, there are ducks before anything else. At some point or another, the goddess of the winds, Ilmatar, formulated herself from the nothingness and attempted to entertain herself by counting rainbows reflected off the water's surface and allowing for the primordial winds to blow through her hair. After about 20 minutes or so of this, she became bored and horny, and thus desired a son to keep her entertained. Though, since she was the only being in creation, this was a physical impossibility, unless...
For the realest niggas in the fucking game right now, she will.
But no. In actuality, the East Wind just heard that she really wanted to have a child, and so came to her with his tempest winds, throwing her body around like a rag doll while simultaneously impregnating her. Now, while Ilmatar was pregnant, she wasn't able to give birth in the typical manner. In fact, she didn't give birth at all for at least 700 years. The specifics as to why are unclear, though we can assume that either the baby had nowhere to go once he was actually born, or because of the unorthodox method of his conception, there may have been some unforeseen side effects. Whatever the case may be, that child's name was Väinämöinen, and he has a very important role to play in a later story which we may or may not cover in the future. But for now, let's hear a bit more about those ducks. As Ilmatar was waiting in vain for her child to finally pop out, though unbeknownst to her, he's already an old man now, a pregnant duck flies by, desperately looking for a place to nestle and lay her eggs. Taking pity on the poor creature, Ilmatar offers the duck her knee so that it may lay her eggs upon it. And so, just like my dad, the duck leaves her children behind with a stranger and then flies off to go do something else. One might think that without the heat of a mother duck's bottom to warm her eggs, that the children might perish, but apparently the secondary heat coming off of Ilmatar's knee was enough to incubate them. There were 7 eggs in total, 6 with golden eggshells and 1 made out of iron. Seeing as these eggs were made of literal metal, they conducted heat much more efficiently than normal eggshells, and so the heat they gave off eventually left a burning sensation on the goddess's knee, which if you've ever had a reflex test done, you can assume what happens next. The 7 eggs rolled down off her body, plummeting towards the waters below, where each and every one of them shattered and then mixed together in the primordial soup, and because this is mythology, the eggs mixed together to form heaven and earth. One oak rise to the heavens to become Päivätar, the goddess of summer and physical embodiment of the sun, while its companion egg became Ku, the moon. And if you're wondering about that iron egg and whether that odd one out formed the earth, well, no. The whites of that egg were actually tinted black, and so they formulated the first storm clouds instead. In any case, Ilmatar was pretty entertained by watching those poor duck eggs get shattered, and liked the look of the yolks mixing together so much, she started stomping on the land with her bare feet, providing some additional structure to the earth. However, all this kicking got the attention of her baby, Väinämöinen, and so the old man popped himself out to see what all the hubbub was about, only to fall from between his mother's legs and make a permanent residence upon the earth. Like I said, Väinämöinen plays a big role in another story later on down the line in Finnish mythology, but again, not today. In the meantime, let's come to appreciate the humble origins of a very humbled land. By the way, as an interesting side note, did you know that J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Lord of the Rings, was inspired to write his series of books partially by the Icelandic Eddas and the Kalevala? So, if nothing else, Finland contributed to lining Peter Jackson's pocketbook. Good on ya, Lönnrot. Good on ya. At the end of the day, what Tacitus wrote about the Finns was probably nothing more than Roman propaganda against the very sorts of people they were at war with at the time. In fact, Tacitus was dead wrong about them only eating plants. Bonus bit of mythological knowledge for you all today. The brown bear is sacred among the Finnish people, and though they revere it for its power and supposed divinity, this did not stop them from hunting brown bears and using them for food. However, following the killing of a bear, a päiväiset, or feast of honor, must be held for the slain bear. The Finns would then proceed to talk to their food and try and convince the bear's corpse that it had died on accident rather than have been murdered, then gain its permission for them to eat it. After the meal was done, the bear's skull would be stuck on top of a pine tree so that the bear's soul could ascend to heaven. So how's that for culture, you stupid fucking Romans? Would you guys ever contribute to world culture? Don't answer that, we don't have all day. While eccentric as the Finnish people may be, I feel it's important to reiterate that the majority of this creation story was fabricated by the mind of one man on a mission to reconstruct his native mythology, which is more of an excuse than Lord Dunsay had. But hell with it, we're still gonna do a video on the gods of Pagana one day. Thank you all very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed today's video. In the comment section below, though, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Should the Kalevala be considered a work of fiction or legitimate mythology? Give me a compelling enough answer and I may just feature it in my next video. As always, you can leave a suggestion for which video you want me to do next in the comment section or on my Discord. Link is in the description as always. Don't forget that we also have a Patreon. $5 a month grants you access to my academic Ayakashi archive videos and really helps me to put out content more frequently for this channel. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Messiahs of Mythology. and have a God's blessed day.
My baby! Oops! Butterfingers!
That is one big pile of shit.
Last night